All right, everybody, welcome back to another interview here with Sheena Williams from Krav Maga Salem and The Art of Badass. I'm joined today by Derek LaBlanc, who is CEO, I guess, or founder of, you can clarify the title, of Kids Safe Foundation, which is a foundation, a nonprofit that's really near and dear to my heart. We've partnered with them several times, and they are all up and down Oregon, Washington, California, and hopefully we'll see them span all across the globe to teach kids a little bit more about firearm safety. So, hello, Derek. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Busy weekend.
Holding up with all the virus stuff and shelter in place?
I'm over it. I'm ready to get back to work. I have kids to meet, so
Yes, no, I get it. I think a lot of people are probably in the same boat. Well, let's dive right in a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about Kids Safe Foundation and how it all got started for you.
I'm the president and founder of the Kids Safe Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit based in Eugene, Oregon, and so we teach firearm safety and accident prevention to kids. And so I started this journey about almost 7 years ago. I was working in the middle of the night, graveyard, and I had this thought come across my head where I had to protect the children, right? I didn't know what that meant at the time. It could have been my higher power speaking to me. Anyways, I woke up that morning, got about 2 hours sleep, and I started doing research. Started looking at, available programs when it comes to kids firearm safety. There was only one at the time, and it was by the NRA's 80 Eagle program, which, being from Eugene, I was concerned about how well received it'd be. And so at that point, I started just researching and started developing my own. And so it was about 2 years of hard development. And that's like lots of trial and error and, consulting with, child psychologists and everything like that, and just dialing in the message. And then we became a nonprofit. We've been a nonprofit for just over 4 years now. And we've reached about 21,000 kids in 4 states. And
Wow.
yeah, and so, it's our goal is to hopefully, obviously the pandemic kind of shut everything down. But we're hoping to roll that program out nationally, and with our partners of Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop, with their help.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, you said 21,000 across 4 states, Oregon, Washington, Northern California. Where else?
Oregon, Washington, Northern California, and Arizona. And
Wonderful.
so, and so now, wherever I fly, like if I go to a conference or anything, I find a Cabela's location near the conference, and I schedule a class. That way, I grow the outreach into these different states. I kind of double duty. I go to my conference and then I do a class, and so it works out well. That way, I'm gonna, everywhere I go, I'm gonna do a class as long as there's a Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop nearby.
So now
So
21,000 kids over several years. I mean, that's a lot of hard work you've put in. I mean, on average, what does an average class look like for you?
Well, typically, we're at the local Cabela's. We're every 2 weeks. We go to Tualatin as well. So typically, those classes are a little bit smaller. So upwards of 20 kids at a time. But we do a lot of like stuff in the community. We do a lot of public events. And so that's where we're outreaching to these kids and we're teaching them. We're very fortunate. We have two inflatable BB gun ranges. And so these things are like big bounce houses, but we get to blow them up, teach safety, and get the kids shooting BB guns. And so that's how we reach over 5,000 kids a year through these inflatable ranges. On average, probably 5,000 to 7,000 kids per year with these inflatable ranges.
And they're pretty fantastic. I've gotten to take a look at them. Not personally, I haven't gotten the chance to connect with you while you've had
Yeah.
one up, but you've sent me pictures of them. There's some just a great product and a great way to really reach out to people and let them practice something safely. Reaching all of those kids and spending so much time with them, teaching them, what is the biggest reward for you?
My goal is for them to live long, happy, successful lives. And so, there's a lot of things that I see that our parents aren't doing that, I did, and I did as a parent. And so what I'm trying to do is basically hold on to those old traditions, empowering our young kids and teaching them, proper handshake, proper eye contact. We talk about anti-bullying. These are all things that, aren't necessarily covered per se, but they're really, really important when it comes to the safety of our kids. And, we're also talking about video games, video game violence, and these things no other organization's covering because I don't know if it's because they don't have the research available to them, but they don't see it as a problem. I'm seeing it, with all the doctors and clinical psychologists that we're working with, is we're showing that, these aggressive behaviors in young children could be influenced by these forms of media. And, social media right now is, a big problem because, people are trapped inside their home. They're using their phones, and might not be the nicest to one another. There's lots of cyberbullying, and so these are things that we're talking about with the kids. And we do more than just firearm safety. And
Yes, you
we're
do.
kind of all encompassing. And I do miss going and seeing Braylon, and I really am thankful for your help up there in Salem. And I need to get back up there. It's like I just want to get back to work. I'm sick of being stuck in the house, and so.
Like I said, I'm with you. I can't wait to get back to work. So on that same note, can you talk a little bit more about just the 4 firearm safety rules that you teach to kids?
Okay, so we got a couple of different ones. So obviously, when we're talking about accident prevention, there's 4 rules that I always cover. Number 1 is I'm going to stop. Okay, stop. When the reason I say stop is it gives me enough time to remember the other 3. There's 4 altogether. Number 2 is I don't touch that firearm. Okay, I leave it there. If I don't touch it, it's less likely to go off hurting me or someone else. Number 3, I'm going to run away. I'm going to get out of that situation. What if when I'm talking to the parents, I say, you guys might be responsible for this firearm, but we don't know about other parents. Just because you've sought training for your kids and education for your kids doesn't mean these other parents have. And so that's why we have to prepare your kids for that. And so when I say run, if they're at a friend's house at a play date and their friend wants to show me or show my kid their dad's unsecured firearm, I want my child to get out of that situation. I want them to run and get an adult. And number 4, I'm going to tell an adult. I want them to be responsible for that firearm at all times. With technology today, there's really no excuse to leave our guns unsecured. I mean, there's great Vault-Tec is a great gun storage solution. There's also the gun box. I mean, these are high-tech devices that you can keep your firearm in there securely, and you can get into it in a moment's notice. So there's really no reason to leave your gun just laying around for a kid to find. And I think part of the struggle that I find with certain parents is they say, well, it'll never be my kid. Like, complacency kills our kids. We lose 8 to 9 per day across the country. And so it's our goal is to reduce that to 0. And that's through proper education. And we don't demonize the firearm. We show that it is a necessary tool in our society, and it's used between 2 and 4 million times per year annually by good people in a defensive situation. That's an FBI statistic. And so that's important. Is we're not trying to make our kids fearful of that firearm. We're showing them that this is a tool, but there are deadly consequences if used improperly. That's why we're not going to play with them.
Yep. And I think you do a very good job, because I've been through several of your classes. I've hosted several of your classes. One of the things that I love that you highlight, and it's very nonpartisan. It's, it doesn't matter what your political, your religious, whatever beliefs are, whether you like guns or you don't like guns. You cannot guarantee as your child gets a little bit older that they may not go over to somebody else's house who has a firearm, and you cannot control all of those elements. You might have a family member who owns firearms. Again, though you're safe with those people, kids wander. If you've ever had a kid, they wander and they get into the worst stuff, right? It's like they have a beacon for finding all the things that they shouldn't get into. And so I think it's really great that you highlight that, because it is really important. It doesn't matter if you believe in owning a firearm. There is a good chance that your child is going to be in a home with a firearm. And so the more knowledge we can provide them, the better. Let me ask you another weird question, because I've watched you do this over and over again, and I love it. You have a unique way of really getting those 4 safety rules to stick. For those of you who don't know, my daughter started taking Derek's classes when she was about, I would say, 2.5, 3 years old. It's been a couple years since she started, but she has been and has recited those 4 safety rules. We had an incident where she was at Grandpa's house and he had a little cap gun, right? It's a toy, but she saw that thing, and first thing she did is she stopped, she didn't touch it, and she ran screaming, Mama, there's a gun, Mama, there's a gun, right? And we're a whole family of firearms owners. And so, but she had followed that and just adores you in so many ways that that stuck with her for so long. And you have countless stories. How is it that you can get this to stick so well with the kids?
Well, it comes down to I'm a big kid myself, I think, there's a lot of quality instructors around the country, and a lot of them do a really good, you have to relate to your audience, right? And so I'm not speaking over my crowd, I'm speaking to my crowd. They relate to me, I make it fun, and also repetition is everything. And so our kids, that's why there's people that do write books, and books are a nice tool to use in combination with what we do. But when you say, oh, I got a firearm safety book for my kid, your kid's not necessarily going to learn that way. We have kids that learn through kinesthetics. Every kid learns differently. And so it's been through my experience, and it's through that trial and error. I probably have over 2,000 hours just in front of the kids, and just bouncing stuff and seeing kids that either, I've seen a lot of kids that either have ADHD, they have behavioral issues, or maybe learning disabilities. And so, I have to be able to relate to every kid, not just that one kid that really, where that light bulb's going to go off. And so if I make it relatable, make it fun, and repeat it, they're going to come back, and they're going to retain the information. And that's what makes us successful. I mean, what we're doing, especially in Oregon, is it's not necessarily the most, they don't want to educate our kids. And so it's our responsibility. When we're talking about lawmakers, they would rather either try to restrict our access to the firearm as opposed to something that truly could work if given the opportunity. And so I'm a big advocate for education. And I know
absolutely.
I know education will solve all the problems that we face. Obviously we have people that are writing laws that have no education on firearms. And so if I could come to them and educate them on, and I try to do the best I can through our social media outlet, is I break it down to the smallest step. And that's how I increase that information with the kids is now they're knowing how that part works and what this function does. They're less inquisitive, and curiosity kills a cat every time. And so our kids, our kids are little sponges, and when they're about 3 to 4 years old, that's when they're most vulnerable. And so that's why I'm glad you brought Braylon at 3. She was a little sponge, and I'm glad that it stuck with her. I mean, that's amazing, and that's another proof that good kids and good parents are a shining example that what we're doing works. And it comes down to is, just because you took her through this one class, your education's not done. I guarantee you probably work with her still.
You bet.
And that's how this all works. It's a grassroots thing that we're doing right now, and hopefully we'll be able to keep going and save a lot of kids and save a lot of families.
Well, and I know, I follow along with the Facebook feed and all that kind of stuff, and you have just tons and tons of success stories. As we're kind of talking right now, is there one that pops up in your mind that you'd be willing to share with everybody watching at home?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the stories that I don't hear, right? Is we have 21,000 kids through our program with 0 accidents, okay? And so that's quite a testament to what we're doing. One prime example is when we're talking about our anti-bullying program, is there was a Cub Scout it was about a year and a half ago. He took a class with us. There was 41 Cub Scouts in that room. I was talking about the anti-bullying program. And once, about last January, I got an email from his mother, and his mom said that he was being bullied at school. And luckily he remembered those 3 steps that we taught him in that class. He got her involved. She ended up calling the police because one of the students had threatened to bring a gun to school to take care of him. And so luckily he got her involved. The cops and they found a gun in a backpack on the way to school. It was that close.
Wow.
And so, that's something that, didn't hit the media, which, it is what it is. I'm glad that kid remembered what we talked about and was able to get his parents involved and to stop that, because, realistically it could have, that was a middle school, it could have been tragic. And so,
absolutely.
That's kind of one that sticks out in my mind. But I don't do it for trophies. I don't do it for the pay. I'm a volunteer, and I haven't received a salary, and it's not about the money for me. It's about impacting our society for the good, and protecting our children, and protecting our rights all in the same. I'm sick of being dictated to. Okay. You and I as professionals are the ones, and the people that we deal with, we are trying to do everything we can to protect our rights. And that's through proper education, good training, good curriculum. We're not the issue. We're not the problem. The law-abiding gun owner is not the problem in America. Okay. It's, we have, lax laws, and we're not properly prosecuting. And so that's why we have so many laws on the books that aren't being enforced, and the sad part for me is I lost a good friend of mine about 3 weeks ago to a DV situation. She was killed. Yeah. And so, I'm still reeling from that, because it was something that was preventable, but the system failed, and the system failed her. And so, I don't want to get off on the tangent, but I mean, ultimately it comes down to is us being responsible for our firearms, and responsible for the education of our kids, and make sure that they know what not to do.
Yeah. And you're not getting off on a tangent. I mean, that story comes back to play in a lot of what you're teaching, and just being prepared for people. So those of you who want to hear the story, please go and check out social media. It's pretty easy to find. It's a heartbreaking story, but it's one many of you have probably heard before. So just to move off topic just a little bit here, Derek, with 21,000 kids taught, what's the reception been like with parents? Because here's the beautiful thing. For those of you who have not been through Derek's class, is if you sit back and watch the kids who are all starting to have these aha moments, every once in a while you'll see a light bulb turn on for a parent too. And even though he's not teaching to the parents, they're learning. And in a way, he roundabout does things so that the parents are gaining education and getting them on board. So what has the response been like with parents?
For the most part, everything's been really positive and supportive, because everybody that follows what we do, they know that my heart's in the right place. And, from an educational standpoint, there's very few programs out there that either does something similar to what we're doing, or can even compete on. I mean, the NRA would be the only ones, and we're so far ahead of them when it comes to the way we're presenting the information. And, it's, for the most part, everything's been good. I mean, when I got into the legislative process, that's when I got my first kind of pushback, but that's from, the typical anti-gun, which they would rather take every gun away and think that these kids are going to magically be saved. And we proved that was not the case. And we had a good run. And so we're going to keep coming back, because, this is something that's needed in our society. We can't just pretend that and not talk about our firearms and think that these accidents are going to go away. And I talk about an accident, realistically, when we're talking about a young child, it's not really an accident, it's negligence, right? It's how did that young child come in contact with that firearm? And, did that kid find it at a city park? Was he using the commission of a crime? Did he find dad's gun? So there's so many things that happen that go into play. And so I think it's really, really important that we just make sure that, we're conscious of our firearm at all times. If my gun is not on me, it's in a lockbox, and I can access it when I need it, especially with young children. One important stat that I just read was, last month in March, there was about 2.5 million guns sold in the United States because of the COVID. Okay. Of that 2.5 million, there's about 1.625 million first-time gun owners, okay, wow, which is a huge stat. And so they finally realized that our 2A rights weren't about hunting, okay? They were about their God-given right to self-defense and protecting their families. But, as a safety expert, that really concerns me, because what about their kids? If there's no education for the kids. And so, I'm working on, it comes down to funding. We have no funding. We have, very lean. I have a great board that supports my vision and where I want to go, but it's just comes down to funding, but I would love to be able to offer a video series for parents that they can log into our website. And, that's kind of where we're going, but it just comes down to just getting everything put together.
Yeah, excellent. And that sounds like a great future for the entire program. I mean, I think after all of this shifts and we get to start returning home, I think people have gotten used to being virtual and online, that I think we're going to see a lot more stay that way. So I think that's a good way for, Kids Safe Foundation to move. You've kind of brought it up a couple times, and I think it's really important that we highlight is just your role as an advocate. So for those of you who don't know, I know Derek personally will reach out to the very opposite end of the spectrum. So he will go out to groups that are very anti-Second Amendment and do his best to have rational conversations with them. He's been kicked out of meetings. He's been spit on. I think you were slapped once, weren't you?
Yes.
But he does his best to go out and have conversations. And because of his willingness to go out and do those things, he actually reaches more people. And I really appreciate, how often he does those things to reach out. And on top of it, he spent a good portion of last year working, at the state capitol and trying to build some legislation for our kids. Unfortunately, there was a lot of pushback on that. But can you talk a little bit about your role as an advocate and meeting some of these people where they're at, even if they are completely against what you believe?
Yeah, so I guess we'll go way back. How about that? When we talk about advocates. And so it was about 8 years ago. It was on a cold Sunday morning, and I went out to work, and I left my gun on my kitchen table. And so that morning, I opened my transponder, and as I opened my truck door, I noticed some feet exiting my rear passenger window of my truck. And so and I ran around the hood of the truck, and the guy was getting up, and I tackled him, put him on the ground. And then my girlfriend at the time came and saved me with a shotgun, so we were good people with a gun. And so that's what started my advocacy. Is I had a story where we didn't have to fire a shot, but the gun was used in a defensive manner, and it stopped the bad guy, right? He ceased all hostile action when he saw the muzzle. And so that started me on this path to where I am today. And, in the beginning, I was real kind of, because I wasn't sure how to relate to everyone. And so I was speaking to my crowd, right? So I was giving speeches with an AR-15 on my shoulder. I was the typical, and I realized I was only reaching about 100 people. And so then I started well, let me go to the other side, and let's go sit down with them and find out how they work. And so I started to go to the local Moms Demand Action meetings. And I started building rapport, and I started learning, what they're truly afraid of. And so that offered me an opportunity to actually re-educate, so they're talking about assault rifles. I start talking about the modern sporting rifle. And then when I started talking about the modern sporting rifle, they asked me, well, what's a modern sporting rifle? And I pull out a picture of me and my AR-15. And she, well, isn't that an assault rifle? I go, no, it's the modern sporting rifle. And they said, well, what's the difference? Like, and verbiage, and that's the only difference between an assault rifle and the modern sporting rifle. And so it's been that experience that helped me kind of formulate the message to where we're at today. And then, I did write a Senate Bill 801, which would have authorized our program in all of the first grade in our public schools in Oregon. And it was, for the most part, it was very well received. It opened up a dialogue across the country, and it showed that it is a possibility if we can get the support. Currently I'm talking to, Nebraska, Utah, Hawaii wants help, with legislation. And ultimately it's, if I can get a foothold in one of those states, then I can go back to the Oregon legislature, say, here is our program. This state has already adopted our program. And so now what? Now what is your excuse? And we'll continue to push that narrative forward, and ultimately they do not have a solution, and we do. And so that's what it comes down to, is just putting in the time and the effort and continue to move forward.
And I think one of the beautiful things about that bill is you had really put so much thought and time and energy into it. One of my favorite portions of it was that, parents were notified long before it even happened. So if they needed to opt out, they could absolutely opt out, right? And on top of that, it was 1 hour, and the people who were able to teach the curriculum were people who should have been very comfortable around a firearm and good with teaching kids, like law enforcement or certified instructors. You really thought that bill out. And so I was disappointed. I was really disappointed when Oregon didn't adopt it, but I'm so glad to hear that other states are looking into it.
Well, and it comes down to it was a learning experience for me. The hardest part for me is when I was approached to write this bill. I kind of, I had it like I didn't know how to put it into words. I was kind of kicking around, and finally one Sunday morning I sat down. I was like, you know what, I got to write this bill. And I sat down in a coffee shop and on my iPad, and I wrote this bill. And then that night there was a kid about 20 minutes from my house. He was shot and killed. And so if that wasn't, my higher power telling me to get my stuff together and get this done, I don't know what else is. And, you know, I mourn with those parents because it's like, why didn't he know about our program? Like 20 minutes from our house. There was a free asset to him and his family, but it was never utilized. And so I hate getting tagged on social media because a kid dies. It just breaks my heart, and we got to do better. As gun owners, we have to do better. There's no reason for our kids to die by the hand of a firearm. It's my guns are worthless if one of my children gets hurt with it. I mean, I'll give them all up. But until then, I'll continue to keep educating and making sure other parents have that same opportunity to educate their kids. Because realistically, our guns are not going anywhere. I mean, there's over 420, probably closer to 450 million guns in America, and they are not going anywhere. It doesn't matter what pen they're gonna sign. We look at California. When we go to California, and they have one of the strictest gun control in the country, and their kids are so vulnerable because there's no education. And like the parents, when we're down there, those parents are so thankful because there's nothing for their children there. And they're grateful to us to be there just for that little time to educate them and make sure that they're sitting good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And one thing I know about you is just your heart of gold and wanting so badly to touch so many lives. That's why I've been such a big supporter for so long. Speaking of supporters and partners, can you tell us a little bit more about those folks that you do work with?
Yeah, so I have I'm a Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop pro staffer. So I have really good partnership with Cabela's. I also locally I work with Northwest Arsenal. They've been a tremendous sponsor and partner of ours. I do a lot of live fire training there. They also help us with our donor our fundraising. I also work with Aero Precision. They make great rifles, and so I have a donor rifle that I show the kids and show the parents how the modern sporting rifle works because I have this beautiful AR-15. Also, I work with Daisy very closely. Birchwood Casey's another one. The targets are great. I got a lot of sticks in the fire. I'm very thankful for all the support that we've gotten over the years. And we keep going, and it's because people see this is something very unique, and it's something I'm very proud of our social media because it tells a story about how we continue to grow and continue to reach. I mean, we reach probably we're down a little bit because of the COVID and the ghost banning and everything like that. So, but on good months we reach over 100,000 people through our Facebook page, which is great, and we're real thankful for that. Sheena, you've been a great partner. Krav Maga Salem. I'm real thankful for your help there, and
we'll continue to be.
yeah. I just one of these days it'll all work out. It's just we just need to get back to work, and I'm over this.
Like I said, I know you're not alone, and it's tough right now. It's not fun, but we'll make it through. We will make it through. So, well, for those people who are really interested in being able to support you and more of what you're doing and buy your hats or donate, where can they go to find out more information and how they can help?
No, so you can find us on our social media, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Kids Safe Foundation. You can also find us on our website, kidsafefoundation.org. There's a donate button there. About in February, our website was really hacked and taken down, and so we're still kind of trying to repair it, and it all comes down to funding, and hopefully we can get that up and going 100%. But it was very, very difficult. I had some big podcasts that I was on, and then the website was just dead. It's like totally zapped it. So
frustrating.
Note to self: do not hashtag Michael Bloomberg in your post. Okay, I'll just say that right now. As soon as I did that, I got hacked. So be careful.
Wonderful. Well, Derek, thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit more about your program. Again, if you didn't hear it enough from me, I highly recommend his program. Please go check out his website, his social media, support and like as often as you can. For those of you who are Krav Maga Salem members, you will find them back up with us here in Salem as soon as we can get going and find some time. Other than that, again, please do your best to support them. Until next time, folks, we will see you later.
Thank you.